Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Energy Unleashed, the podcast where we talk about a lot of client sessions and relate them to you. So, my name is Suzanne Worthley, and I'm here with my partner, Kim Hess.
Good morning.
You have like this star now in the porch. We're at the cabin, obviously, both of us. You have this star over your head, which is the first. It looks like your crown chakra and the eighth.
It
It looks
is.
like the eighth chakra. Like,
It's this the sun is shining down on me.
I don't, what is that one? I'm not used to that. What is
It's the
that?
sun. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, that's
When it's windy, I
adorable.
have to take it down because it just whips around so much. I don't want it to break, but yeah.
Yeah, we're at the tail end of, well, she's at the tail end of being up here for a while. I'm actually staying all week to write. So we've been having some really good times and some interesting times. And in fact, this is the thing we're going to talk about, not quite client sessions today, but more personal stuff in terms of Kim had her parents come and visit, and you can talk about them in a second. And I had my parents up here to visit, and we are in what we would call that sandwich generation. And I wanted to talk a little bit about that today because it truly is something that most all of us, if we are fortunate enough to even still have parents that are on planet, we struggle with some things with that. And so my parents are 90 and 91. My mother 90, dad 91. And yeah, pretty good still with their faculties in terms of the mind, a little bits and pieces of dementia, which is typical at 90. I can't imagine that you would remember everything,
Mhm.
but not struggling in any way, shape, or form with massive dementia. So that's one thing that I'm extremely grateful for.
Mhm.
But what I wanted to talk about is the pressures of us being in that middle generation. We obviously both have kids. And I'm in the grandkid thing, which you're probably broaching soon. We've got these generations this way, and it's hard because we we have a lot of stuff going on. So yeah, why don't you introduce about your parents, and then we can start to go from there, maybe.
Yeah, actually, it was wonderful. My parents drove up from Nebraska to see the cab. They'd never been to the cabin before, and my dad was just really itching to get up here and see what everything was all about because
Yeah.
he's a handyman. He likes to fix things and check out things. So,
Yeah.
but they're 80 and 78, and they did great. The road trip, I was kind of, it's not an easy way to go from Nebraska to northern Minnesota.
Yeah. A lot of
Um,
this.
a lot of changing highways and all the things, and they handled it just great and used technology, which was amazing because
Right?
sometimes they get so frustrated with technology, it just doesn't work right, and, but they were great. They loved it up here. They had such a nice time, and I was just really grateful that they could actually make it up here, and
Right.
see everything, so
And I think, I've met Kim's parents a couple times. She's met mine obviously several times being up here together. But I think what is so amazing, we were chatting last night ourselves over this, and that's why we decided to talk about it and kind of unleash our own feelings on this in terms of, and again, take what resonates. We're not here to tell anybody how to live with their parents or anything, but I was kind of feeling astounded on the difference of one 10-year period
yeah.
because the difference
Between our
between,
parents?
yeah,
Yeah.
the difference between parents being 80 and 90, I found myself, like, almost in awe of the fact of how much my parents have changed in that 10-year period,
Yeah.
from going from, independent like yours are. Not that I think my 80-year-old parents would have done a 9-hour drive with technology, but, my dad would be the old school map, but, I think it was very, very obviously a bit painful to see the decline in a 10-year period of so many things having to do with independence, and I think
Yeah.
this is really what I wanna talk about, to be that sandwich one in the middle, being responsible yet not responsible, seeing how in 10 short years, which really isn't that long, we used to think it was long, now we think it's pretty dang short,
It's
right?
flying by so fast. Are you kidding me? We're gonna be
It's
there,
terrifying.
like, yeah.
And I was calculating the other day, I was doing some things because one of my kids had a birthday recently, and, she's basically the age where I was when I had my first child, and I'm doing all these calculations in my head right now, and I think that this is probably typical for a lot of people our ages, but I sat there calculating like, "Holy crap. When this kid was this age, my mom was my age." And I was doing a lot of that and realizing the terror, I guess I'm gonna use the word for me, of how quickly things change in terms of health and wellness and independence and respect and dignity and all that stuff around aging. I don't think we do a really good job with that in our culture, right?
No, I feel like in my perspective on this is that this culture keeps us so busy that you don't lift up your head and really pay attention to some of that. You know what I
That
mean?
might be it.
When I was going through my 40s, I was working a lot. And I was, my oldest when I was 40 was 20. So she was
Right,
already becoming independent, but I still had a high schooler at home.
right,
And so we were still running after activities and doing like place to place to place to place all the time. And so paying attention to my parents, I didn't really, because when I was 40, my dad was 60. So you could start to see a few things, but he was still so active at 60 that I didn't even really think about age with them. And
correct.
mom too, and so it's interesting those time periods, but now that I'm 60 and my dad's 80 and my daughter's 40, I'm like, wait, 40? My daughter was 20. She's just getting married and,
You're
is,
right.
different path than what I went with. And then my dad at 80, he's doing good. I mean, he has some hip and knee issues, so he's looking to take care of some of that stuff, but otherwise he's a busy guy and,
Right.
you know, doing a lot of stuff, and my mom is too. So,
And
but
then
the
and then
changing.
it hits where everything changes in terms of then they aren't as able. And I think that's the really scary part where all of a sudden I'm very blessed that I have, 6 kids in our family, 5 siblings, and
Mhm,
4 of us being in town, are all helpful in terms of, juggling schedules and things for them. But when it gets to the point of when their capacities are being compromised, when they are not being able to, when you finally have to take those keys away, it's just a really big deal.
mhm.
And there's certain pivotal points, I think, when they are having to leave their home, for example, because it's not safe for them to be there alone any longer, and putting them in a not a nursing home at this point, but a care center. And I think that that can still feel very enslaved and imprisoned, as my dad fondly calls it, the prison, even though it's a great place and it feels
Yeah,
good and everything's wonderful. But it's a loss of a lot. It's a loss of a lot in terms of your ego. And all of a sudden, you aren't being able to have the independence. And I think what I'm finding I struggle with is, yeah, of course I'm going to be there for you. Of course I'm going to take you to your appointments. Of course I'm going to be your Uber. Of course we're going to pick you up or drop you off.
mhm,
But then I'm juggling around my schedule and I have a very limited schedule as does everybody. And so now it's like, well, you can only do your appointments on this day or this day and it gets and then those are my days to do my things that go out the window. And so it's finding that balance of still loving and respecting and honoring your parents and their journey and not being resentful and pissed off because now I don't have any freaking time to do my stuff.
yeah.
And it's really and yet how grateful you are to still have your parents. And so it's this juggling of emotions all the time when you're with them when they're becoming more and more incapacitated. And I think that's exhausting on our bodies emotionally and then hence mentally and physically. It starts to get a bigger picture going on in your own mind.
Right, and then think about you were bringing up then your children are on this other side of us,
Right.
and they have even though they're adults and they're doing their own thing, there are things. There's
Yes.
even whether you're getting together or you're babysitting the grandkids or they need help with something with their house or a car or whatever
Yep.
it may be, you're getting pulled in that direction too. So you're getting pulled this way. So the thing that came to me last night after we were chatting is that yeah, it is hard to take care of yourself in the middle of all of this.
It is.
And it's not like it's all hard and we don't I don't mind all of that because I think, being an empath, I can quickly go into the caretaker mode of whatever, but
Sure.
at the same time, I keep time's going so fast and it's like, why am I not consistently doing some of the things for myself?
Right.
And when you look at your schedule and your calendar, okay,
Yeah.
there's so many other things around me. Yeah.
Which is the things, Kim, if I can just dovetail off of that comment, is the things that we should, and I never use that word, be doing right now so that we don't end up as incapacitated.
Exactly. Yeah.
Shit, they can't even walk, so I have to go doing this and this and this for them, but maybe I got to get in a walk so that I don't end up not being able to walk. And it's such a projection of fears to come, which is not something that's my norm. I don't do a whole lot of fears to come in my life until the last probably 6 years. And it's not, I don't I don't think it's fear about them. I don't think, well, a little bit, but I mean, I'm a mortician's daughter. I know they're going to die. Of course, we're all going to die. And even know I'm going to die. It
Mhm.
isn't dead that scares me as much as deterioration of capacity, capabilities, and it's not even that I have to rely on somebody else. It's just how do I rely on this?
Yeah.
It's just a really strange transition of understanding that these human bodies are finite. They are literally a finite thing in our lives. And most of this metaphysical world we live in, we do our best to go to the infinite, understanding we're spirit, blah, blah, blah. But at the same time, we're dragging around, and I'm going to say it this time, a big suit of meat. And this meat and bone has a lot of troubles when you're 90. Yeah, all of
Mhm.
a sudden you can't walk, you can't pee, you can't, nothing on the toilet. And you're on the toilet 24/7 and you're driving everybody else crazy on the toilet 24/7. And now I got to have pads and now I got to have a bar to get out of the shower and now and these products and these things are just astounding. I have to have two cushions under my ass just to get out of a normal chair. And it's like, holy shit. You don't think about any of that stuff until you're in the midst of watching it, and then your brain starts to go, "Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god."
Yeah. Yeah. How am I gonna wait, I'm gonna be different than this. And it's so I've said this for a long time though. It's like, oh, I won't go through that. That's not
Yeah,
what's gonna happen to me. And then I get to 60 and I'm like, oh my God, I remember my mom complaining about this and that. And here I am.
right.
You know,
All of a
it's so
sudden, my
weird.
eyes are going funny, and why am I wearing cheater glasses now? And oh my god, I can't get out of the chair without when we drive to the cabin, I have 3 hours, you're even longer. When we get out of the cabin drive,
Yeah.
like, out of the car from the cabin drive, it's like, and
I
then
have
I
to
can
stand just for a little bit and let everything settle where it needs to be.
Yeah, and that's terrifying, and to have that this is where I do pull out empathy, true empathy, and go, "Holy crap, if that's really truly what it feels like every day."
Mhm.
I do have empathy for that. So it's not that I'm mean or resentful, but man, do I get tired. I mean, we were talking, Kim and I, when mine left, and I said, she just calls, like, "How you doing? Are you catching a breath finally?" And I'm like, "Jesus Christ." That's when you pour a really stiff drink and go, "I'm just done. I'm just done for like 3 days, I'm done." And sadly, let's take this even a little further. A lot of us are moving into the age, Kim's 60, me turning 65 this year. It's like now your spouses are moving into it as well if they're
Yeah.
older than you, which is my case. And I sit there and I watch and I'm like, "Oh no, 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 no. Now I'm married to my dad. This is not happening." And so and then, like you said, the kids are doing the thing. And can you watch the grandkid and you watch the dog because we're going to this and going to that. And I'm just like, oh my Lord. So the enough thing,
Yeah.
I am not enough. There's not enough of me thing is over the top in the sandwich, period. And
Yeah.
I do my best to balance that, but I think I kind of suck at it lately.
Well, it's really like I said, it's hard because you're and there are things most of the things I want to do. But
Yes.
then when you look back at why am I not in the place that I want to be right now, or like my idea of how things should be is different than what's happening. And you look back and you're like, well, okay, that's why. Because
Right.
doing all these other things.
And
So
and there's a really I think one of the reasons I wanted to bring this forward too is there is a really, really important part about being an empath with these situations in that, which we both are obviously. I don't want to take on the sadness. There is a depth of sadness that they are holding that I have not noticed or recognized in my parents
mhm,
until this time period, which is obviously justified in terms of all of a sudden I don't have my own teeth anymore. Therefore, I don't eat the
mhm,
same. Therefore, I don't enjoy the foods and the liquors and the things that tasted great in my mouth before.
mhm,
I can't imagine how tough that is, and the frustrations that I see, and the sadness and the despair that I see, and they don't have tons, but they have enough that I can glean that off, and I need to be very careful as an empath to go, "That's not mine, that's not mine, that's not mine," and yet, because they're my parents, I wanna be there for it and just be really careful with that transference of energy, but to see someone have, I think a despair is a really good word, or a form of grief, um, that they've never had in their
Mhm.
personality trait before, ever before, for the whole entire 65 years of me knowing that person,
Wow.
is astounding to me. And that's something that scares me a little bit, like, what the hell? Where's my dad? Where's my
Like,
real dad? My dad's
what
never angry. Why
yeah,
is my
like,
dad
what
angry, you
part
know?
of their journey are they in? Like, what are they subconsciously, consciously doing? Because you're on that end of the
Yep.
lifespan of there's so much work that you don't even realize you're doing when you get closer to that, time of death.
And and I watch it because they are in a care center, and I watch it when I walk in, and there's 8,000,000 old people that are just nasty and old, and my parents are like this beacon of lovely light. I mean, they're so silly. They love to do crazy stuff just to make people happy there in terms of, 4th of July, they'll come with their goofy outfits on, they'll have their, New Year's Eve hat on or whatever. They're constantly doing things to lighten up and brighten up the space there, but there's so many that I don't know who these people are, obviously,
Yeah,
but negative, crabby, given up. And I think this is the word that I wanted to bring forward too. It's a sense of forced surrender
yeah,
almost. And I think that that's the thing that scares me as a human going forward in a biology that is definitely going to deteriorate because it has to. So this sense of a forced surrender, meaning I can't do it anyway, so I might as well give up, which is not the same as a surrender, right?
no,
I mean, it
mm-mm,
really isn't. It doesn't have the same heart space
mm,
as a surrender. And I think that that's a really dangerous place to get to because I don't think we have to get there even when we're 91, right?
yeah, true, true. It's kind of interesting in watching my parents. I think their immediate family members, like their parents, and for my dad, especially his siblings, died fairly young.
Ah,
And so when he hit the age that the last sibling had died, he had this attitude of, "Well, I'm not gonna be here very long anyway. Look at my family."
right,
And it
right,
took him a while to get past that. I finally looked at him like, "Who are you to say? Like, what are you really you're so active still. Why do you think that that's gonna happen to you?
right.
Your body's totally different than theirs is. You've been more active in your lifetime." And my mom too with diabetes, she's like, "I never thought I would live this long." They just
Oh,
expected that they would both die fairly young.
okay,
And now they're in this place where they're past that, which is really cool because they're actually doing things that are keeping them going,
okay,
for their health purposes
right.
and, activities. And so, like, they had to go through that almost grieving before they had to kind of
A
period,
little bit of
of
rebirth,
expectations, of what they thought was gonna happen didn't happen. And
right,
it's like, "Oh, okay, well, huh, let's keep going." You know,
right.
and so I know the next 10 years will be totally different,
It is,
with
and it comes fast. I think that's the
Mhm,
scary part is it goes really fast. My dad included, he wanted to be older than his father when he died, and he is at that point, I think either this year or next year already, and he did that little thing too. "I'm gonna be that age," and now he keeps upping it, and like I said, basically, they're in fairly good health for being their age, but I
mhm,
think as a practitioner, it's difficult for me because I monitor life force
yes. Yeah,
energy,
yeah.
and it's just an automatic for me. It's just what I do. I mean, I can't not do it, and
Mhm,
I monitor where their tank is at
mhm,
oftentimes, and it's an interesting thing for me, and this is why one of the reasons why I wanted to bring it forward too, is that it's our job to fill ourselves with life force no
mhm,
matter what age we are, and life force filling, I don't care if you call it prayer, meditation, quiet time, whatever, it it doesn't go away at an age.
mm-mm,
And I think that because we do this forced surrender, a lot of that quiet time does go away because we figure we're not going to be here very long anyway. But in my opinion, it's important for us to really respect the fact that, well, you do need to get up and get your own coffee because you're capable of that. So take
mhm,
the 20 steps to the coffee pot and back
mhm,
because that's what's helping your life force too, right? I mean, you're moving the bones in the body. You're respecting that you're still here. You're being grateful that the body's moving versus, I can't, can you get that for me when you know that you can? And it
Yeah,
gets
could you just
easier and
get me another
easier.
cup?
Yeah, it gets easier and easier to get waited on. Not that I don't mind waiting on my parents, and in a lot of ways, I love to wait on them instead of having them navigate. For example, if we're sitting outside at a picnic table, I'm like, oh
Yeah,
no, I'll get your stuff, you know?
yeah, right.
I don't want to see you wobble all the way in and wobble all the way out because you can't hold the plate anyway. So that's all fine and dandy. There's not even feelings of resentment or irritation or anger with that, but it's irritation or anger when it's like you're 20 steps across the kitchen and now is a chance to move your body. This is okay. You're safe. You're fine. Let's get you life force churning again. It's called chi. It's called prana. And that's our job. And so that is a little concerning, but you know what? We don't teach people that. I
No.
mean,
And
who teaches us about chi?
yeah, and don't you think they have quiet time, but it's not intentional quiet time, like you said, a meditation or a I think the thought process, like you're talking about, they're getting this point where I'm not gonna be here long anyway.
Yeah.
The thought process and the negative thoughts, it's that whole track of,
Yep.
that takes them down a path where they're no longer, connecting, like,
Or I
spiritually.
find my mom has a really good word that she's using a lot that sums it up. She said, I'm so weary
Oh.
lately. And that's a word we don't use a whole lot until we get
Oh,
there. And it's
yeah,
a hard word. Weary is just that exhaustion beyond measure that is confusing because I don't really know where it comes from.
yeah.
Yet it's coming from everything because, again, there's no life force or chi or prana moving through the body. And in her case, a lot of times she has an iron deficiency and she ended up in ER the other day for some other things. And I kept saying, because I can scan her, and I'm like, she needs an iron infusion. And no one listened to me. And lo and behold, what did she need? 4 days later, they figured out an iron
Oh my
infusion. I'm
god,
like,
after
hello.
lots of testing, yeah.
God forbid you listen to the daughter that can scan her, which is another thing I wanted to bring up. I think what is very difficult in this sandwich generation too is how do we monitor our aging parents and or even I can go the other way on the scale, our grandkids or our whatever kids in terms of Western medicine options, they pile more and more medicine on and more medicine. And now I have a UTI and throw that in the mix. And now I have a blah, blah, and throw that in the mix. And I have 3 different kinds of eye drops and I have 14 different pills. And just the magnitude of that process is terrifying to me. And then when we've got the little kids, it's like, oh, how do we really throw antibiotics in them at 2 and 3 years old over and over again, wrecking their immune systems from the get-go? So I stand in the middle of these two bridges also and go, okay, I do my best to keep my I don't necessarily keep my opinions to myself, but I keep I don't judge it. I mean, I just say it. What about this? What about that? But I don't hold on to it because it's not my choice.
Yeah.
But, there's a lot of holistic things we can still do at 90 or at 2,
Yeah,
right?
right, right. Well, and then, yeah, you just throw in Western medicine is really you need it and you don't need it. It's
Oh my
that
God.
balance
It's
is really
just
hard just for me. Like, what do I really need? And, um, so that's a hard one, especially to monitor because they go to so many different doctors, and looking at when I worked with a doctor clinic, that was the doctors going to the home in many states, the number one thing that caused deterioration of people quickly was mixing the wrong medications together.
oh, for
So if they go
sure.
to a cardiologist and they go to a regular general doctor and then they go to an oncology doctor, and so they're taking all of these things that, whatever that cocktail will end up being at the end of it can take a person down really quickly.
Right.
So monitoring all of that is really it's not easy when they get to a certain age.
And being the one who's in the middle, it's really difficult to not know the extent of their so-called weariness from those cocktails,
Mhm.
meaning, they really don't have the capacity to be on track or they don't have the capacity to walk over and pour their own coffee because of the amount of weariness in the system because of the
Mhm.
stupid drugs. And so I
Yeah.
get it. I
Yeah.
get that they have to have the drugs. My parents or my husband is always going, well, if I don't take them, I'm dead. And I'm like, sometimes I'm like, I don't know if that's true. I mean, I don't know. I mean, maybe, I don't know. But it's very hard for someone like me that doesn't take anything to not be judgmental. And I
Yeah.
do my best to not judge because I'm lucky enough to have their body here still, right? No
Great.
matter what
Great.
shape.
Yeah. Well, and
But
so the message in this is like for being in the sandwich, like, what are the important things that we should be, I shouldn't say should be, that we are, the focus should the like for us to focus and move forward and
Yep.
really balance this out better because it's overwhelming at
Yes.
times.
I think a couple of things and why I wanted to bring it forward because obviously I'm not the only one doing this. Everyone in this age period has something they're dealing with,
Mhm,
whether it's themselves, a spouse, a parent, a sibling, a whatever. We're going to lose people, period. That's the
mhm,
bottom line. Find out what you're really scared about because I actually took some really deep time with this recently and I really sat with the concept of I'm not mad. I'm not mad. I have to help because I don't have to. I'm choosing to.
mhm,
I don't have to pick them up and be an Uber, I'm choosing to. So be really clear where your fuel is coming from in terms of so that your body is very aligned with, "This is my choice. My parents are still here. I want them at this party.
mhm.
It's my, yes vote to go and get them, so I don't get to have that resentment thing," right?
Right.
That said, at the very time when the parent is taking baby steps like a 2-year-old and taking 20 minutes to get from point A to point B, it doesn't mean that Suzanne's own self isn't going to trigger something to go, "Are you kidding me?" I mean, we were walking down your dock from your pontoon and my mom was doing the shuffle and the shuffle and the shuffle because she can't see. And I said, "Stop looking down." I said, "You have somebody on your arm, you have a cane on your other side, look forward because when she looks down, she starts to do this." And I get really snappy and irritable, but it's not that I'm mad at her. I'm mad at the process of you can do this
Yeah.
differently.
Mhm,
And yet, what is that doing? Is it wasting 2 more minutes of my time of walking off your dock? So these are the things that we are
mhm.
responsible for undoing in our own head. And I think it's very important. And I know this for me, don't beat yourself up for being irritable and angry sometimes. There's just times where I just have to F and walk away. I just gotta get away. I just cannot do this for another minute, and that's when I run down to your cabin. It's like,
I said it's
there's
all
just
I was in my head, it's like, it's all about triggers. There's those
yep,
triggers that you
yep.
take it, you take it, you take it, and now you can't.
And
You
it's
can't.
no different than the same triggers, and that's why I think energy is so amazing. It's no different than the same triggers for anything in our life. When we hit, "I'm not safe, I'm not worth, and I'm not enough." And this is mostly about enough because they're not enough, therefore you're not enough. There's not enough of Suzanne to go around. There's
Yeah, yeah.
no time for Suzanne because I'm doing ba 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 ba. And the reality is that's not true either. So like you said at the beginning, making sure that there's a balance in your quiet time. And I do that at the cabin. I will go into my own room and just shut the curtain and say, "I'm out, tag, I'm out." Or I'll go, like I said, down to your house or go on the boat or whatever. Finding that space so that
Mhm.
the empath can regenerate and rejuvenate without the judgment is really, really important. I think that's huge. That's
It
really,
is. And, at the same time, when you look at your parents, my parents, whoever's parents, they get triggered. So, like,
oh,
we're
oh,
asking them questions or trying to get them to do something that are the questions, they'll snap,
yep,
because they're also in a place that, they're vulnerable. They feel vulnerable in a certain place. And like with my parents, they're very independent. And so if I don't know what it would be, but if I'm bugging them about something, it's like, "Hey, we're fine. Stop it."
yeah, yeah,
And that's a trigger for them. And it's
yeah.
like, "Oh yeah, you're right. You are fine. I don't need to worry about
Although when we were sitting in your porch, and this is the funny one too, because Kim was doing a lot of looking on her phone for the best route, and she has this great app, and she's going through it. And even your dad's like, "Well, I don't know how to do that technology." And I find my parents, especially when it comes to
that."
technology, they don't even know why my car talks out loud when we're driving. They're like, "What is that? Who's talking?" Because they don't understand that that's, Siri telling you you're going to turn in a half mile to the left, right? So
Yeah,
they oftentimes feel really antiquated or outdated.
yeah,
And God only knows the Beagle family, which is my maiden name. All of my siblings will milk that one till the cows come home. Yeah, you're never going to catch up with that stuff, so don't even bother, which probably makes them feel worse because it's like, why would you even think about understanding Siri when you don't have a cell phone? So
yeah,
that whole concept of life has passed me by
yeah,
I
yeah.
think can be a really big trigger in most cases, but in some cases, my parents don't even give a crap. They just laugh it off. So,
Well, and my dad wants to know, he's such an intelligent man, and he just needs to know all the detail and why it works. Why
yeah,
does it? why is that? If I do this, what does it do? You know,
Yep.
and then I get triggered because I'm like, "Dad, just do it because it's
Right.
gonna do it for you."
Right.
You
I
know,
don't
and
have to explain everything. Yeah, we can
I
go from
know.
0 to 100 super easy. I know it's really hard. Another one that I think is a really big trigger for my individual family is, and we tease my parents relentlessly about this, is really just bigger concepts, especially with the world that I live in. You know, we'll get into religious debates or things like that. That's like, how can you even still believe that? And I think it's very important for us to know when you're 90 and you have 90 years of religious programming and you're getting to the point where you're going to probably be dying soon, that whole concept of where do I go, what is this happening, where, you know, is there going to be the guy with the book and I'm in the book or I'm not in the book, all of those things we tease him a lot about, especially my dad, because he's very old school. And I think it's really interesting because they've chosen two different really paths. My mom has opened up over the last, it started in her 70s and in the between the 80s, completely opened up to really new and mystical ideas, not having to have the answers, blah, blah, blah. Whereas dad has gotten more and more solidified in, no, this is right, this is wrong, this is what happens, this isn't. And
Mhm,
it's funny because again, we always have free will, no matter what age we are, to either
mhm.
grow into new knowledge or stand steadfast. And
Yep,
when we are in the death process, me knowing this from doing hospice, many, many, many people, no matter what the age, will get very, very adamant about their belief systems in terms of dogma and programmed religion because that's their so-called lifeline to dying. That sounds
right,
funny, but
right,
lifeline to dying, that's what they hang on to make sure that they know what they're doing, when most of the time it's all, you know, illusionary anyway. But I think that that's another thing to really recognize and work with in a way that works for everybody,
yeah,
you know?
yeah, that
Our
makes
family teases him a lot to get the information out, and little by little, he questions more and more, which I think is kind of cute at 91. But
mhm,
you know, these are things that each individual family can either talk about or choose to ignore, and many choose to ignore it, and that's fine
mhm.
too. But
Yeah, no, I think that, my dad especially he's very open to, you know, all the different phenomenons that are going on and that there's possibilities of, you know, dimensions and
yep,
aliens and, you know, all the things. So,
I know, I love that. I love
yeah,
that.
it's really fun. My mom is more, yeah, it could be, but I'm really not interested.
I think that's what I'm finding too in the sandwich generation. It's like, and I guess this is for everybody no matter what, but the sandwich generation for me really shows the capacity of not really caring. I don't care about that stuff. I just doesn't, that whole generation didn't care about metaphysics. They didn't care about ascension. They didn't care about it because it wasn't a thing.
No.
And remember, technically speaking, we were still an enslaved planet, held hostage 100%. So it energetically really wasn't something that was
Mm,
conversational. And so now that's very foreign to them. That's like
mhm,
speaking Chinese to them, saying, what are you saying? I don't know what's coming out of your mouth. And
mhm,
that will happen oftentimes for me. Whereas then my kids or my grandkids will be another generation of another form of I don't care. I mean, my kid, well, I have one kid that's like, I don't care about aliens. If they land on the ground, then I'll care, but I don't care until then. And I think that's so interesting because every generation really has a different take on that.
mhm.
Ours is the worker bee generation to open this stuff up, to activate, to make things happen. Therefore, we're very vested in it, but a lot of them aren't. So that's a thing we want to watch during these aging processes too, is make sure, are you this piece of bread, or the meat in the middle? Where, you know, because they're all different concepts, right?
Yeah. And then you
Yeah.
add siblings, and that adds a whole nother layer of
Right? Right.
yeah.
So, I mean, I think that's a normal thing anyway, that whole thing of who cares about what, but I find it's really stronger when they age. That's,
Mm,
again, something they hang on to because it's what they know,
mhm.
you know?
Yeah, I
So,
agree, I agree. Like I said, my dad wants to know everything, and so he
right,
questions and he reads and he researches things because he wants to know.
right. As
So,
whereas when my dad got into the 90s now, he doesn't give a crap about almost anything, which I think is
yeah,
amazing. So,
yeah.
and that's fine too.
Mhm.
That can be
Yeah,
healthy. Yeah.
right.
I think
Okay.
the one word I want to round this down with is the word dignity. And I think as a culture, we don't really hold high on the scale of the way that we treat the elders with
Mhm.
dignity. And I can understand how difficult that can be when I go through my ups and downs being in the sandwich. And first and foremost, I am very honored and blessed and grateful to have them in human form still. I
Mhm,
mean, it's so weird that I, again, grew up with death and dying, death and dying, death and dying, and I still, at this point of recording, have both parents and all my siblings. It's a little weird when I've done hospice with dying for so many others,
mhm.
and I don't fear it at all. I have no fear of them, if they were gone tomorrow, I get it. There's a huge part of me that knew that when I was a kid, but that doesn't take away the concept of the appreciation of actually still being able to have them on planet. And so to be able to navigate these different changes, even though they're not fun all the time, I do my best to find the dignity in it so that they don't feel like they're just outdated and antiquated, so that they don't feel like they're useless, or God forbid that oftentimes they feel like they're a burden. And I think that's the hardest word.
I think the
You're not a
burden.
burden. You're my parent.
Right,
You're
right, but
not a
that's the
burden.
one
You're
that
my kid.
I would say that's the one that my parents worry about the most.
Yeah.
They want to remain independent, and, um, knowing that, well, with their parents or, that there's a point, that you can
Yeah.
no longer maintain that, for everyone's safety. So,
But I think that's my biggest fear. My biggest fear is to be the burden. My biggest fear for me
right.
when I get to be 90 is to be that one. My biggest fear is, oh shit, someone's going to have to roll me into the room in some chair with wheels on it now. I mean, that whole thing, put me back in diapers because I can't get to the bathroom. All of those things are terrifying for me.
Mhm.
And I think it's important for us to really work with forgiving ourselves in terms of not trusting our bodies,
Yeah.
forgiving how we treat our body, forgiving how we we don't accept the fact that it is a finite thing that has an opportunity or not to do or don't do things as they grow and change. Our legs change, our breathing changes, our eyes change. Those are scary things, and they want to be looked at with dignity too.
Mhm.
So looking at the parents with dignity, but looking at yourself with
Mhm.
dignity is the harder one.
Yeah.
I
I think that's what you the whole point of this being in the sandwich is how do we get there? You know,
Yeah,
and how do what's the balance in all of this so that we can be in a place that longer, using this body in a way that maybe our parents weren't able to do.
and
Um,
is longer always better? I
yeah.
also tell my guys, I don't wanna be sitting there staring off into la la land, not being capable of doing anything, and I think that's something that each of us gets to do with our higher guidance.
Mhm.
Guidance does listen. We all do have an exit point in our book of life, obviously, but we are in charge of that from a higher perspective too. And, my grandma always prayed every night, I want to fall asleep and, I want to die in my sleep kind of a thing. And I've done that my whole life. I don't even put energy into what I don't want for a death. I put energy into what I do want for a death.
Oh yeah.
And so I think it's important to put into energy also, and I'm in the midst of changing this hopefully, of what I don't put in the energy of, I don't want to decline. I don't want to have to do that. It's switch it. It's that law of attraction. Start, patterning that now. I will still be mobile. I will still be this, that, and the other thing, so that your law of attraction is working to your advantage for the next 30 years, right?
Right. Right. Yeah. No, this is a really good because everybody is at a different point in their life, but this is a deal.
Yep, it is.
For our
It's gonna happen to all of
future.
us, so, I mean, we wanna look at that. Lastly, I wanna, round down with gratitude. That is one thing my parents, especially my mother, has been the top of the line my
Mhm.
entire life, the amount of joy and gratitude, just the simple things, just the ability to serve others by coming to the table at the lunchroom at the care center with a smile on her face instead of the crabby old bitch at the end. I think these are really small and subtle things that we can offer not only ourselves, but others during this journey to be able to keep that vibrational frequency up. And it's so cute. The one thing she listens to a lot of the things I say, and she asked me some time ago, she's like, "Well, I don't understand why so and so's still here." And I said, Mom, I wrote about it in my first book. The Energy Healers Book of Dying said when I was working with the full dementia man, and I asked him, well, I don't get why you're still here. If you're just sitting in a wheelchair, drooling on yourself, not being able to talk, like, why aren't you dead? And his higher self said in my head, because I'm still here to hold a point of light.
Mhm.
And I was like, what? And that was so confusing to me at first. And then it made so much sense that these vehicles are much like if we look up into the sky and see all the stars, the points of light are weaved into the fabric of our hologram. They are part of the structure. And until our job being structural in one shape or form, being the vehicle, until that job is done, you're still holding a point of light, no matter what anyone's focus or perspective is of that holding of the light. If I'm drooling, sitting in a chair, I'm still holding the light, etc. So anyway, we were having this big, deep conversation, and she's doing the oh my gosh thing. Come to the care center, probably, I don't know, the next week, and she's got this big thing on her front door because she puts all this junk on her door for everybody to read when they walk by. Remember, you are holding a point of light, blah, blah, blah. And she's so cute because she's now this preacher at the care center about the whole point is the point of light. This is what you are doing until the very last expired breath in your body. You're holding that point of light
Oh,
in
that's
a
so
container.
cute. Oh my
Yeah.
God.
So, her gratitude and her excitement to share that stuff is beyond measure. And I think that's one of the fuels that can still keep your tank filled.
Well, and
So
think about
don't,
how many people she's influencing doing that just
yeah.
in the day to day, even if it's
Or
just for a
confusing.
second in a day. Like,
Or
wow.
confusing the hell out of because I like what she
Yeah,
got
but
on
it's,
board.
it gets the wheels turning. You read it and
Yeah,
you think, huh,
yeah.
what is that? What is that? Maybe
Yeah, and it and
open
it
them
has
up.
made an impact on not
Mhm,
only her, but many, and I think that that's lovely, and I don't take any credit for that, she figured it out, so it's about being present, it's
mhm.
no different than us, it doesn't matter our sandwich placement, it doesn't mean that we are different just because we're 2 or 90, it's all about the joy factor of being here in the experience, and so I think that is what I'd like to land the plane on is the gratitude,
Yeah.
so,
Yeah. I am so grateful for the time that I am able to share with my family.
yeah,
So,
yeah, it was fun. All
mhm.
right, everyone, until next, take what resonates, toss anything that doesn't, share this if you choose to, which I'm sure you have somebody in your life that might want this information, and hit the like button and the subscribe button. And so maybe even leave a comment or two. We love to hear from you.
That'd be
So,
great. We'd love to hear
yeah,
from you.
right?
Yeah.
All right, until next, everybody, Cosmic Hugs.
Goodbye.